1st, 2024 at 6:02 p.m. And Ms. McCulick, can we get members present, please?
Here.
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 Here. And we'll ask Superintendent McCulick to please lead us in the pledge.
Hand over your heart, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Item 5A. California Voting Rights Act and By-Area Election Study Session. Governing board members and members of the public will learn more about the California Voting Rights Act, by-area elections, and an analysis of our district's historical voting trends.
Yes, I would like to invite a representative from Redistricting Partners, Liz Stitt. Did I say that correctly? She has a presentation for us to give us an overview of the California Voting Rights Act, and will then give us opportunities to ask questions, because this is a learning session for everyone. And then there should be a clicker over there if you want to advance. Perfect.
Now it is. Great. Well, thank you for having me. As Sandy mentioned, we will be going over the California Voting Rights Act. So really, this is a chance for you all to ask questions about it and learn more about whether this is something that your district wants to go into. So what we're going to go over, obviously, the California Voting Rights Act, the safe harbor provisions associated with them, and then what's the Federal Voting Rights Act and how it's incorporated in with the California Voting Rights Act, and then what is racially polarized voting. So the California Voting Rights Act, it was a law that was enacted in the early 2000s. It basically prohibits any kind of at-large elections in a jurisdiction where there is evidence of racially polarized voting. So as you all are very familiar with an at-large board, as you are now, that means voters from all over the district vote for all the board members, and people can run from throughout the district to serve on the board. When we go to districted elections, an election district means, or actually, I'm going to get into that in the next slide, so I'll wait for that. But so racially polarized voting, it's defined as differences with voting patterns between protected classes and how the outcome of the vote is. So we're looking for correlation between race and the outcome of the election. And then there are a few principles that the California Voting Rights Act takes from the Federal Voting Rights Act. But when you think of the California Voting Rights Act, you think that it's this big law with many parts to it. It's literally just prohibiting at-large elections if there's racially polarized voting. So this is the crux of the law. Under the Federal Voting Rights Act, what we're looking for in those cases are majority-minority districts. So that means it's an area that is the size of an election district that would make up at least 50% of a protected class. And the definition that the Federal Voting Rights Act uses and the California Voting Rights Act uses as a protected class, it's a group of people, typically minority ethnic groups, minority language groups, religions. So when I say protected class, That's what I'm referring to. California, the three most common protected classes are Asian, African American, and Latino. And so the federal government uses the majority minority definition as a standard for vulnerability. The California Voting Rights Act uses just the ability to influence. So that's a much lower threshold. And there is no set number, like percentage wise. Unlike a majority, right, 50% or more, ability to influence is really, it could be 25, 30, 40%. So it's significantly lower. And of course, there are legal fees associated with this. If you ever do get a demand letter, that usually means it's at least 30,000 plus inflation, just for legal fees for the defendant, or the plaintiffs rather. This can be lessened or eliminated using the safe harbor provisions provided in the law. So when the law was first passed, they didn't have these safe harbor provisions. They had to come up with these in order to ensure an easier, more copacetic way of transitioning to election districts. So some of the most important ones with the safe harbor provisions, you have to have at least 5 meetings to go over the districting process. The first 2 meetings have to be pre-map meetings. So it's all about getting community information, testimony, gathering maps drawn by the public, and then the next 2 are devoted to picking a map, drawing lines, and then the last one is to vote on a map. And this must be completed within 90 days. There is the ability to ask for an extension, but that's really up to the plaintiff. And then what is districting? So clearly that's just the transition to creating election district boundaries. This would not impact school district or school boundaries, right? So a lot of parents, especially with school districts, they get nervous whenever school districts transition. They think that their kids might have to go to a different school. None of that changes. It really only changes how the board is elected. So it determines 2 things: who's eligible to run for office. They have to live within that drawn election boundary, and then who can vote. Again, they have to live within that election district boundary in order to vote for their candidate. And then redistricting, it's what happens after districting happens. So districting happens once, and then redistricting happens every time after the census. So once all the census data is collected and then released a year after, that's when all the jurisdictions that are districted have to redistrict, and that's to balance the population. So it is a constitutional issue. It's also a SCOTUS, Supreme Court precedent issue. Unfortunately, it does cut off the bottom, but, oh, thank you. So there are 2 reasons: constitutional, equal representation, 14th Amendment. It's essentially how well people can advocate for themselves. So for an example, we had a client, this would have been 2 redistricting cycles ago. They were a coastal community college. They hadn't redistricted since the 1950s. They had one district that had 100,000 people, and then another district that had 12,000 people. So if you lived in that 12,000 people district, you had 8 times the ability to advocate for yourselves than the 100,000. So we're looking for people to be able to equally advocate for themselves. Also, there's the one person, one vote Supreme Court precedent. Started back in the 1960s, and many, many cases leading up into the 80s as well, where it has been established that voters have the right to equally elect candidates of choice. So somebody's vote shouldn't be worth more than their neighbors, right? And then the Voting Rights Act. So this is the Federal Voting Rights Act. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this law, very monumental, passed in the 1960s. There are two parts of this law that have to do with redistricting. The first one is the Section 2 majority-minority district aspect that I went over a little bit earlier. And then the next part is Section 5. So this is no longer inactive, or it's no longer active. But the pre-clearance required certain areas with history of suppressing votes to get their maps pre-cleared by the government. So they had to prove that they are that they're following the law. This county never had to do that, so it wouldn't have been relevant anyway. But Section 2 really is where, especially in California, there are many Section 2 majority-minority districts. And this school district is a majority Asian citizen voting age population. So clearly, there would be majority seats if you guys do go to districted elections. The California Voting Rights Act prohibits the use of at-large. Yeah, we already went over all that. And then, so getting into the Section 2 noncompliance issue, there is a test that we have to follow. It's called the Jingles test. This is Supreme Court precedent. So there are 3 hurdles we have to pass in order to be obligated to draw a majority-minority district. And the first one is, does the election area have a group of a protected class that would make up a majority of that district? And then the next test is the minority group politically cohesive? So are they voting in a block? Is it, can you prove that in a way with statistics and history of the protected class? And then 3, majority of voters vote sufficiently as a block usually defeat the minority group's preferred candidate. So usually that means white voters are consistently voting against the preferred class's candidate of choice. So these are the 3 hurdles that jurisdictions have to meet in order to be obligated to draw a majority-minority district. And then what is racially polarized voting? So the California Voting Rights Act, it uses a lot of the definitions from the Federal Voting Rights Act. So just like we use protected classes from the Federal Voting Rights Act definition, we also use polarized voting from the Federal Voting Rights Act definition. So all of this would be evidence of racially polarized voting. So again, it is a protected class that there's evidence of them voting cohesively and the white population essentially taking away their ability to elect their candidate of choice. There was an analysis conducted for the district. I don't believe I can release that information yet, and it's up to the board and legal counsel on how to handle that. But I'm happy to take questions about the California Voting Rights Act or the Federal Voting Rights Act for that matter.
All right, thank you. Do any board members have any questions?
Just one. Could you just explain one more time the difference in the standards that California has versus federal?
Yeah. So the Federal Voting Rights Act, that is focused on majority minority districts. So in order for that to be determined, or in order for a jurisdiction to be obligated to draw majority minority districts, step number 1, there has to be a density of the protected class within an election district. The California Voting Rights Act, it is specifically at large. And if a plaintiff believes there is polarized voting, all they have to do is prove that there is a minority population, protected class, that has the ability to influence the election. So if there's a citizen voting age population of a protected class in an area that would make up an election district, if they make up 30% of the population, of the CVAP population, and there's evidence of racially polarized voting, that would suggest that there is potentially racially polarized voting, and then the jurisdiction would potentially move to election districts. That was a mouthful. I hope that made sense.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. I have a quick question about redistricting. So you said after we originally district, they get the census data and then redistrict. Does that happen yearly or does that happen just after the first year?
Good question. Once every 10 years, right? So census, it occurs, when there are double zeros. Redistricting happens when there's a 0-1. And then it's updated every 10 years. For people districting, for jurisdictions districting, they will always be obligated to use the last census data. We helped district the city of Napa in 2019, and we had to use the 2010 census data because by law we're obligated to use that. So even if it's outdated by then, we still have to use census data.
Awesome, thank you.
I have a question. How much on average does redistricting cost, and is the school district obligated to pay for the redistricting?
So yes, the school districts are obligated if they choose to go forward with it. Usually they hire consultants or legal counsel to go forward with it. If there is a demand letter associated with it, then you would likely pay the legal fees for the plaintiff, which is capped, as long as you follow the safe harbor provisions, it's capped with the interest at $38,000.
Actually, my question was the redistricting that occurs after every
redistricting.
census. How much on average does that cost, and are districts?
That is really hard to say because every 10 years, it's an industry that pops up every 10 years, right? So I believe we were charging school district, don't hold my feet to the fire on this one, but I believe we were charging school districts around somewhere in the ballpark of like 30 to 40,000, depending on how difficult it was. Yeah. But obviously with inflation, every 10 years, I could imagine that's going to change.
Do we have any other questions?
I think I know the answer to this question, but what happens if we redistrict and when an election comes around, there are no candidates that apply within that district? Is it we have to appoint every year because no one's applying within the district that we've defined?
So every jurisdiction is a little bit different here. You would have to look to your code, your whatever bylaws, and usually it is an appointment, but maybe legal counsel would know that.
Is that it? Okay, well, thank you so much. We'll be able to take this information and make an informed decision. Superintendent McCulick, did you?
This is Craig Baumgartner. He's our legal counsel. And so we invited him tonight to answer any questions you might have that relate to this. So I was asking him if he knew the answer to that question you asked.
Oh, I'm sorry. And would you mind repeating it really quickly? I know the answer.
In the event that we do redistricting and we have no one interested in that area that's eligible because of that? Is it
Yeah.
appointment?
It would be a failure to elect situation. So obviously, like last week, I guess it was last week, right? Was the filing deadline for this coming election, and if you had an insufficient number of candidates to fill your spots, you would be in a situation right now where you would likely be making an appointment before, I guess, before the election. Actually, I think is when you would have to do it. So the difference would be if you've moved to districts, is that whoever would fill that space could not just be from anywhere in the district. They would have to be from the specific trustee area.
I actually have another question now, because I think you said the redistricting obviously is every 10 years, and I can't remember now. You said 2 dates. I think you said the 2 double zeros, and then you said something else. Can you repeat that again? Yes.
The next census is going to happen in 2030, and so then you'd have to complete your redistricting by 2031. Is that right? Generally. It was a little bit different this last time around, I think, because of COVID, and some deadlines got extended. And frankly, it took the census folks longer than it was supposed to get all their data out. But I would defer to Liz on that. She definitely knows more.
President Ali, I have one more question or follow up to that. And the reason why I ask that is because if we do the redistricting every 10 years and we already have, and let's say we have gone to by district elections and we do the redistricting and then there's 2 board members that redistricting now puts them in the same district, what is the consequences of that?
I will defer to Liz on that. My understanding is that everybody serves out. Like nobody would immediately lose their job, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so when redistricting happens, it doesn't go into effect until the next election cycle. So everyone serves out all 4 years of their terms. And this is the same if you go into districts or go from at-large to districted elections, everyone fulfills their 4-year terms. Shoot, I wanted to make one more point. Can you say the question one more time?
So in the event that we do the redistricting and there are 2 board members that are within now that redistricted area, what are the consequences of that?
So only one person obviously can serve that seat. So they would, and it also depends on when they're up for election. So sometimes there are people who are drawn together and one's up that election year and then one's up the following election cycle. So sometimes they would, the person up in the following election cycle will run that current year against their colleague. And if they lose, they still get to serve on the board and finish their 4-year term. Or if they win, they would probably appoint somebody to finish that other person's 2-year term. So only one person can serve. And this is particularly contentious with city council races. People will literally move to fit into a district that's not challenged.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
I want to say thank you for your presentation. We're in election year, but just want to say particularly in communities of color, and I'm going to use Palo Alto and East Palo Alto School District as a perfect example of redistricting and how if there's not a level of awareness, it impacts those districts and families because our marginalized communities aren't generally engaged in the voting process and they don't find out till after the fact. And so I say that to say that I think it would be upon us a level of due diligence to have these conversations more regularly, even way before an election, because I think that's a missed opportunity for people who may not have otherwise been involved in the democratic process in this way. Because unless they're impacted, they're not driven. And a lot of our school districts are usually the last to know. Our families are the last to know and understand how this redistricting impacts them, and or when an initiative is put forth like we see in Palo Alto and East Palo Alto right now. So I want to say thank you, and I hope that this conversation can happen more frequently to raise that level of awareness across the board for our communities.
All right, thank you. Do we have any speaker cards for this item?
I don't have any speaker cards now,
Okay.
but I wanted to see if there was anyone in the public that wanted to speak. No? If you wouldn't mind going up to the board, to the podium there, and if you could just state your first and last names so that we can put it in our minutes.
Yeah, Gladys Mihira,
Can you spell your last name?
Miyahira.
Thank you.
I was just curious, like, when is the next election for the, picking a new board members and how long each board member has? And is it currently now where the board sits in this district to make decisions for our schools?
So, do you want to answer that?
Let you answer. Yeah.
So right now, the board, we have an election every 2 years, and it's always on the even years. So we do have an election coming up in this November, 2024. We have 2 vacant seats, or 2 seats available. And this election, we have 3 candidates running. So it's a contested election. We, right now, are at large, which means the governing board can represent anywhere, they live anywhere in the district. So the question is, do we go to by area and decide which 5 areas are in the district that we would have someone represent?
And will this be kind of noted more for the parents to know that this is actually happening? Like she mentioned, we like to be aware of what's going on. And, me as like Latina, coming in, I want to make sure that the Latina vote is also in the district of,
Yes.
Daly City. So I want to make sure that that's also included and parents know both in Spanish and English that this is happening. It's going to affect, happens with the board, the decisions that the boards are making for our schools. So I just want to make sure that more information is going out. Because again, like tonight, I don't see a lot of parents because I don't know if they know that this is happening. I saw one email for this and that's it. We usually get calls on whether or not, to attend meetings or this and that for like our schools. But I just saw one little blip. So I would like to see more of information being sent out to parents to make them aware that this is going on, voting is going on, what's happening and how we can vote and who's actually coming in. And also not just hiring for like color, because I don't believe in that. I want to make sure that the parents are aware of they're hiring for merit and what that actually can bring into the schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is our first meeting discussion, and this is not a decision meeting. This is an information meeting.
Oh, yeah, and I
So
would
this
love
is
to see
the
more of
first
those.
time.
Yeah, this is
and it
awesome.
was in the district newsletter, and then I sent out,
Yeah.
which we actually did get, looks like 6 or 7 parents. So
Yeah, for a school of 300 plus and other district schools, it's
Yeah, yeah.
a little bit. So you would like to see a little bit more.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Okay. Do we have any other speakers?
if you could state your name and also what school you might represent, and I'll get that from you later too.
I'm Mai, M-A-I, last name Lee, L-E. I am a parent of a student at FDR. So I just was wondering if you can share more about the decision-making process. You mentioned that this will be the first of several meetings, so I just wanted to know what the trajectory of that decision-making process will be. And I was also wondering a few follow-up questions. One, if there's historical data to show where board members have lived within Daly City so we can see if they are overrepresented from certain geographic areas. And then also if the public will be able to see the information on the polarized voting that she alluded to that is still, that has been collected but hasn't been shared.
Yeah, of course. To answer the question, do you want to? Right now, currently, our board is very diverse in location of where they live. When you think about natural dividers of Skyline, 280, John Daly, they're actually representing, I think, all the different areas. So currently, our board is representing different parts of Daly City. And then also the process and the timeline. That would be an agenda item to determine, do we want to pursue this or not? And then that would be public, of course, on the agenda items. And then at that point, we would contract with an agency or like redistricting partners or some agency to help us go through the process. And it would take about a year. It's the 5, she mentioned it earlier in the slides, it's 5 meetings. So there would be parent engagement. We would do them virtually or in person and in different sites, et cetera. So that would be well publicized, but the board would have to first make a decision if they want to pursue this. And it would be a resolution. And so that's the first step. And then there would be a timeline from there as to the dates of getting community input, et cetera. So this is really just information for the board to see if they want to pursue moving forward or not. And so at a future meeting, we can have an agenda item if that's the desire of the board to then decide if we want to go through the process. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I'm just wondering, is there a possibility that the board says, no, we will not do that, and then it will not be part of public discussion anymore?
Yeah, the board would have to put an agenda item and then decide whether they want to pursue this or not.
So at that meeting, there would be additional public comment on how
Yes.
parents feel about it.
Yes,
Gotcha.
thank you.
Oh, the last question was about the racially polarized voting.
Yes,
data?
so once the board has had a chance to digest it through closed session, then we will be able to share a summary of that.
Okay, thank you.
And so that will be shared publicly.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the public?
If you wouldn't mind sharing what school or what area you represent? Thank you.
So just so I understand correctly, you can have all these meetings you want, but it's going to be up to the board to decide whether this moves forward without the consent or
Correct.
public.
Correct.
If they want it, the board still gets to decide for the district
The board is the ultimate decider.
with no.
Unless there is a lawsuit that comes or some notice that comes from the courts or from legal.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure, like, then to me, it seems like, well, then why are the parents involved if they're going to make this final decision?
They want to hear your input.
Okay, but it's, okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, I hear where you're coming from. Actually, I was going to, kind of summarize what we're talking about here and address what you're thinking about. So we are putting this out in the public right now to get the public's input and feedback because we haven't decided anything yet. So that's what the purpose of tonight is. We've already talked about this in closed session, but we've never talked about it in public. And so we have to do that. And then any decisions that we're going to make in closed session, we come back and report it to you in public. But we're going to get as much input as we can from the public and from our community before we even decide if we're going to redistrict or not. So hopefully that helps you. Oh, okay. Yeah, but that's the democracy, that we have is that we're actually representing the public. We're here so that the public has a say so in the school system, right? So we are representing you. So if there's any issues or anything that concerns you, you don't have to just come to these board meetings. You can also reach out to us and we'll respond to you. Okay. Thank you. That's great. We welcome all the questions we can get. Okay,
President Ali, can I make a comment? So I am also, I'm a board member, but I am also a parent in the school district. I actually had 2 children in the district. One of my oldest daughters has moved on to our high school district. I say that to say I hear what you're saying, and I actually have not received any outreach from anyone. And so I say that to say if you have been reaching out and you haven't heard anything, we are 5 board members, and so you can reach out to all 5 of us. If one person doesn't respond, I'm sure sure another person will. But you also have the ability to reach out directly to the district office and reach out to someone, because we, like President Ali said, we do represent the community. Because I'm a parent, I actually do get talked to a lot when I am on campus with my children. And so I'm sorry that you had that experience. And I want to make sure that as we're saying this out loud, this is on YouTube, it is being televised, that parents do hear. We do want to hear from you. There was a comment that was also made about not having a room full of parents. I, as a parent, saw that as well. People are busy. Some people can engage, some people can't, and we're not going to fault parents for doing that. We just want to make sure that they know that we're here. At the end of the day, we are 5 people. We can't make decisions without the input of the public, because we do serve the public. There was also a comment earlier about hiring. Technically, it is voting. And so it's really not a hiring. You would actually have to go and vote and put it on the ballot that you want one of us to actually be in this seat. And so I do think that for Superintendent Mikulik, I think it will be very important in ensuring that we're communicating broadly. I think last year, the year before last, I had made the comment about our social media. I didn't think it was robust enough. I know that we've done a lot of work with that. I know we sent out a communication about this in our newsletter. I know that there was another email blast that went out, but it should go on social media. People receive information differently. I know it's probably easier with the elementary schools. When my oldest, who is now in high school, was, I believe it was Tobias, she was at, I remember we used to receive calls weekly and we knew what was going on. I don't really receive calls a lot now that my youngest daughter is at Garden Village. So maybe that's something that we can work with our principals on, because I do think, again, each parent ingests communication differently. Some people read their emails, some don't. Some people see their voicemails, some don't. Some people scroll through social media, some don't. And so if we're doing one way or another, we may be missing a group of people. So I just wanted to say that out loud.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions from the public?
Can you spell your last name for me?
Burciaga.
And you were representing
George Washington.
Thank you.
First question is, how long do we have till the next meeting? That way we as parents can maybe talk to other parents at our school and to get them more involved, because I would like to see what they have to say. Because I know at my school, our parents, they're very giving, but they're not so involved. So maybe I can get them more involved as much as I can. That was my first question. Now I'm trying to think. Oh, social media. So at our school, we use Class Dojo, and I know we're on that a lot. So maybe if we could get the principals or whoever is running those types of whatever that school uses, maybe the parents would see it more also. That was it. Thank you.
Our school board meetings are the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. And so this is a special meeting, but we have a meeting next Wednesday. I doubt we would probably put it on that agenda because it's coming very quickly. We're posting tomorrow, but it would be on one of the meetings, if this is the direction the board wants to go, to put it on the agenda. We would do it at one of those meetings, and then we would make sure we publicize like we did for this one and get it to the principals to make sure it gets in their class dojos and their newsletters, et cetera.
I want to thank the parents for coming out and to encourage you not to give up in communicating. I apologize too if communication may have not reached me or response had not come through. I know I've seen you in the past communicating, Gladys, and it's your voices that lift things that we are unaware of. Because as Trustee Jordan has mentioned, there's 5 of us, but it's a big district. And we miss things. We're all human. But unless it's communicated to us, we will never know. And that's the honest truth. Will we do our best? I can confidently say that it may not hit the mark for many, but But I can confidently say we will always do our best, and we believe we're doing that. But our best may not be what meets the goal. And I say that with a level of vulnerability, because you're here tonight to communicate what's on your heart. I was sitting in that seat 10 years ago, and I was frustrated, and I ran for office. And I share that to say that each of you have shared and displayed how you are getting out in the community and being that voice that we aren't reaching as a representative. You are being that voice. So the only way we're able to facilitate change is a lot of people get confused. This process is not easy for the average person. If it's not on the agenda, people come here and they feel disrespected. They're like, I got up and I poured my heart out during public comment. You can't even nod, you can't even acknowledge me, you haven't even responded to me. And it's frustrating. And I will say it's especially frustrating for me as a woman of color and as a woman. But I didn't understand the process. I didn't know that if it wasn't on the agenda, that I would not get a response from the board. And even when we say that to you, it's missed when you're in the middle of your passion. So I say that to say that thank you for not giving up in communicating. We obviously see the value that you have, not just in your children, but the families that you're representing here tonight. So keep knocking on the door. If you don't see it or hear it on the agenda, don't give up, because I will tell you, things that get communicated and requested to be on agenda may not see the light of day at the next meeting. So please stay with us. We're determined to make sure that your voices are heard and your requests are facilitated, but it is a timely process. So we thank you for your patience, your diligence, and your commitment and investment to our entire district and community.
Thank you. And so we don't repeat what our colleagues say up here, so I'm going to just finish by saying that is the purpose of this meeting tonight, is to get your input, and we welcome this. Some of you may think this is not a lot of parents. This is a lot. We've had board meetings where we didn't have any parents. So I'm happy to see you all here and happy to hear that there's interest in this. I'm the one who asked us to put this on the agenda. I don't know how much interest it was for it, right? So, but just because I don't know something doesn't mean anything. I need to hear from you. I need to hear from all of the people in our district. So we welcome you all to come to speak out at these meetings, and of course to follow the protocol. At every board meeting, you're able to speak on any item that's on the agenda, and you can even speak on items that aren't on the agenda. But when you speak on an item that's not on the agenda, we have to listen, but we cannot respond to you, and we can follow up. So you're doing the right thing tonight. This is on the agenda, so we can have this dialogue and this conversation. So I'm happy with this and the way that it's going tonight. I'm also hearing from our public. They're telling us they want to talk about it at the next meeting. That's what it sounds like to me. So I just want to know what, my colleagues feel. Do we want to have that slight inconvenience to rush this onto the agenda before it gets put out for the next meeting?
I mean, did you want to go first? And I mean, I think it could go either way. I'm actually also wondering if putting it on the meeting afterwards would give parents more time to communicate with others and get more people involved in that conversation. So I'm wondering if rushing it is a good idea for accessibility as well.
I actually was going to suggest another special meeting because I feel like we need more conversation. I don't know if it's clear. I don't know if people knew that people were getting elected this year. I don't know if people knew that it's not hiring. It's actually like you got to be on the ballot. You have to have so many amount of votes to actually get on this seat, meaning that people that are up for election right now have to go out and campaign. I'm sure you guys are seeing like posters and banners popping up. You're probably receiving text messages. And so that is it's like my fellow trustee said, it's actually not easy to get hired or elected into this seat. And so it sometimes seems like we don't have enough the public doesn't understand what it means to actually be on the board, what the role is of the board, what we can and cannot do. And so in my eyes, I'm like, I think it's probably another special session that covers not just the redistricting, but also what is the board? What do we do? Why do we do what we do? That's my suggestion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was writing down a study session about the election process in general. Right, I think that would be good. Any other input?
Yeah, I certainly echo what my colleagues have so eloquently stated, and my message is vote and consider running yourself. It is extremely important that that everyone make their voices heard in a democracy by voting, and I commend the parents who have come, the members of the public who have come here tonight to make your voices and presence heard. And consider running yourself is something I would say to every person in our district, because we are a democracy. We represent you, the citizens of Daly City, Broadmoor, and Colma who live in our district. And frankly, it is, we don't have enough people who are stepping forward and wishing to run. That is a major problem that's been in our district for quite some time. Even though this is coming election is a competitive election, is very difficult to get people to run. But that is the way to really get involved. And it's good to clarify too that there are no special requirements. You need to simply live in our district and care about the schools and education. So it's something everyone should think about.
Also be 18, register voter. Right. So yes, thank you. So once again, I welcome the robust conversation as long as we're following protocol and doing it in a respectful manner, which we have. So thank you once more for your comments, but what's more, important than the comments and the conversation is the action, as we all are saying, right? So thank you. Anything else from Ms. McCulick or?
No, I mean, we can determine a special study session date. Is that what the direction of the board, to have another study session or put it on the regular agenda?
Yes, I was waiting for a motion. So
Well,
it sounds like there's two.
Before we do that, I think there was someone in the public that did want to speak again. Just wanted to make sure.
No worries.
It's just for the public that is watching at home. We would like you on the microphone, please.
Pardon my ignorance on the whole voting thing. I mean, because I really want the parents to get involved. And I mean, going from the Tobias School now here with 2 students and getting to know 2 bodies of parents where they're all involved with volunteering and this and that. But when it comes to the board, they really shy away because they're not going to listen. Now coming to this side, listen to the middle school side, it's almost the same because they just drop off and leave. So I'm kind of curious on how do we vote on somebody's name when we don't know anything about them, right? You see the presidential stuff going on right now. We see what they're bringing to the table, their merits, of what they're bringing to the school district. So how do the parents know what the candidates are bringing in? And would it be possible, has there been something where the parents are able to see the candidates, what they bring to the table before we even vote? Because we're basically voting, blindly, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember voting and I was like, oh, that person looks cool. I looked them up. I was like, oh, okay. And then, kind of voted that way. But then how do we really know, do their religious or what, their beliefs and stuff like that actually match what the school district, our community is? So I'm wondering if there's something that parents can be involved in to make sure, who are we voting? Who's this person? Who's that person? Are they really here for the students? Are they really here for their mental states? Are they really here for their education and where the money's going to and, where is that progressing? So I don't know if that's ever been done or is that something that can be brought on as a special? And I thank you for this because this is great. We would have never known as parents that this is happening. Votes might have been done, and then we would again know at the end of the day, oh, the school district, board decided this for us. Mm-hmm. So I greatly appreciate you bringing it to the parents to be part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tonight is just information, so I appreciate you speaking. I'm actually, maybe you can help me answer that. I don't know. I'm putting him on the spot.
I'll address that. So thank you once again. Yes, I agree with you. We should have more candidate forums, not just for our school board, for our city council races, our board of supervisors. We do need to know who we're voting for. Also, there has been forums in the past. The League of Women Voters usually puts on a candidate forum in this county. But I am glad that you're saying that publicly, and I hope people are watching live and they'll look at this on YouTube and people will organize it and hold us accountable. You do need to know who you're voting for and why, and I welcome that. So thank you. I don't know if you...
Well, I guess my question was, is that something that a school district is allowed to do, is to hold a candidate forum? I didn't think it was. I know when we do appointments, we interview candidates, but that's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
There are definitely limitations on what sort of district resources can be used. You can't spend district money to sort of advocate for things like a parcel tax or a bond measure. I think I'm not off the top of my head aware of districts hosting candidate forums, but I also don't know that there would be a legal prohibition on that, like for the district to host something that's purely informational or providing essentially a forum. So yeah, I think that's something we could certainly look into.
I don't know if it would be, I mean, if obviously not the board, but is that something that maybe the teachers union or the teachers might be interested in?
It would.
If we don't have any here.
They're
but-
not representing us here tonight, so I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you were saying that the League of Women Voters, I think you were saying that they do candidate forums, so it may be
Yeah.
is something that is done outside of the district. I was just curious if it's ever been done within
Well, and
a
then,
district.
I mean, there are probably members on the board right now who can speak to this. Ordinarily, with the election and the filing deadline that just happened, usually candidates have the opportunity to submit a candidate statement, which is included in the voter information guide that you'll receive in the mail from the county elections office if you're a registered voter. Even if you're not, you can usually pick it up at the library. There are extra copies all over the place. So that's an opportunity for candidates for office to provide their statement about what they stand for and why they're running for office. But yeah, I mean, I think the point that's made is a really good one, and local elections are obviously very important.
There is an organization called 4NC for North County that in the past organized candidate forums as well. So I can reach out to them. And as far as like you said, the candidate statement, so we didn't even know we were going to have any candidates, right? So that's what Trustee Rashba was speaking to earlier. And then we found out at the last minute that we're having a contested election. So I'm pretty sure you're going to start seeing and hearing some action, with these 3 candidates going for 2 seats.
Yeah, the filing deadline for people running for local offices was about a week and a half ago. So this is all happening right now.
Can I make a comment? So I think I mentioned I was a parent. Similar to my fellow trustee, I actually joined the board because something happened at my child's school that I was appalled about. It was during the pandemic, and I was like, oh, what's going on? So I actually called the president of the board at the time, and I said, hey, this happened. What's going on? Like, we need to solve for this. And then they were like, have you thought about joining the board? And I was like, what is that? What is the board? What does that mean? And so I kind of got educated on it. And fortunately, I had a supportive, I guess, family and friend system that basically educated me also on the voting process. I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but my seat is up for re-election. And I will say that I didn't have anyone outside of me, again, because I had an issue. I went to the board. I made a statement. I was like, this is not okay. And that was how I essentially found out about board elections. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people take so much focus on federal elections. Like I know this is an election year for the president, but people don't know about their local candidates at all. And so unfortunately, it has been the responsibility of the individual, similar to what you said earlier. I actually, and I do this every year, I actually research every single candidate. It does take time and it does take dedication. But if you want the right people in your local offices to represent you, that is unfortunately the work that you have to do to ensure that you are not making blanket assumptions for the people that will be making the decisions for the money that you are paying taxes on. And so I would just encourage the public and, you know, whoever's on YouTube to take the time to research the people. When I went for the election the first time, I actually was a part of, I wouldn't say a forum. It was more so that I was a part of a bunch of different conversations with regards to endorsements, where I did have to say why I wanted to join the school board, what I was going to work on if I were to join the school board. And so it was out there in the public. You mentioned an organization. They didn't do a forum, but they did post on social media all of the candidates for the different areas. And they said, and they wrote statements about those people and said, this is what I think this person, or based on what they've said, what this person will bring to the table. I do also want to note, which is why I do think a study session is important, that even though an individual says, I'm going to do these 3 things, or these are my top priorities, when you join a board, it's not about you as an individual, it's about the collective. So even if I'm like, I want to make sure that the walls are painted purple, if the rest of the board is like, we're not painting the school walls purple, then majority rules and the walls remain white. And so I do think that sometimes that is also confusing. It's like, well, if we did go to bi-district elections, just to tie it back to what we've been talking about, and a person in one district wants to paint the walls purple, but the rest of the districts don't want to, guess what? You're not painting your walls purple. So I do want to point that out as well.
I think it's, and I think a study session, it would be really helpful. I'm interrupting you because I know the public can't hear you. And so it's dead silence on the YouTube. So I just want to recap. You're basically saying that Gladys is saying that having some knowledge about elections, it would be helpful, because right now the only way you find out is if you have a problem and you come talk to someone. And so I think having a special study session would be helpful for the public. And then also I noted to myself to advertise better about upcoming elections, and this is how you can get involved. And so just getting the word out there, I think that would be helpful for, you know, getting more candidates to be interested in giving information. So thank you for your feedback. And I want to make sure the public heard a paraphrase, but did you want to add?
Oh, the only thing I'm going to add, and this is, you know, this is just my opinion, but I'm the district's lawyer. All these folks up here, they all have other jobs. They're doing this. This is like what they decide to do in their free time. And like, you all are saints for doing this. Like, being a school board member is God's work. And these folks, you know, it's a thankless job for sure, but you know, you do it because you're doing this because you want to make a difference. And so I know that's why you're here also. That's why they're here. You all are in this together, but it's such an important thing. These are where like the decisions that affect our children get made. I'm married to a teacher. You know, I've got school age children, so I'm very thankful for the board, and I appreciate your deliberate consideration of this topic.
All right, thank you. We have another comment from one more board member, then I'll wrap this up. And we're still looking for a motion, right?
If there is a motion. Today is really information,
Right.
but if you would like to pursue this, you already know you want to pursue this, we can add it as a future agenda item, or we can, at the next board meeting, you could then put it as, let's discuss it in a future, You don't have to, make a motion today.
Thank you. I'll start with my question for legal counsel. Considering that these organizations that regularly do host and facilitate these forums is not available to do that, is there a way to follow up if the district can host it? The reason why I say that, in 2015, when I sat on a panel of 8, I think it was, at City Hall, that place was packed. And the reason why I say that is because people wanted to know who they were voting for. It's one thing to read about somebody on social media and see it on a piece of paper, but they came to feel the energy of the person, just like you said. I want to feel this person. I want to see them. I want to hear how they answer these questions. So it gives the public that opportunity. So I just want to put the question out. I don't know if it's a possibility because a lot of people don't touch school districts. That's why I say that. They will run to the chance to host a forum for council and state. But we have to pull teeth. And I want to say this to anyone that's listening. Elected office is elected office. We step into spaces time and time again, and we're like an afterthought. And I say that to say that we work just as hard, if not harder. We raise more money than some state legislators and city council members, and we don't get as much as they do on our small stipend. Not that we're here for that. But I say that to say that this is important work, and people should be able to make an informed decision. And a forum allows them to make an important decision. So I don't know if you could research that.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll certainly. I'm not. I want to make sure I get you the right answer. Then better than a quick one right now with my hunch. I have to believe that there's some way to make it happen, whether it's through the district or maybe through a PTA or a group like that to host something. I know that this happens. So we'll follow up with you. I promise.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I just wanted to, okay. Can I ask you to go up to the podium, please?
I'd want to make a suggestion if there is a future study session that if you have already had some conversations about this or given it a lot of thought to present some of the pros and cons of moving in this direction, I think it's a big ask to ask parents to extrapolate from a more theoretical presentation like we just had to really understand what would the impact of that be on a local level. What have other school districts seen as positive or negative or neutral impacts after that decision? I think that's the only way to actually get parents to provide more comments and to have more input. I think for myself, I don't really want to provide my input at this time because I feel like it's just a intuition or something. I would really like to have more thought and background on what are the policy implications or what are the impacts that have been seen in the past.
Point well taken. All right. Thank you. So I just want to remind everyone that we do have board goals, and what we're doing right now is goal number 3, community engagement. And so everything we're talking about tonight is just going to lead to more broader involvement from the community. And like I said earlier, we welcome that. And then as far as, you might not know all of us, but all of us have either been students, parents, or employees of this school district. I've been all of those. Ms. McCulick, this district is as homegrown as you can get. And I couldn't care less about being an elected official. I'm a public servant. And I do it for pay, without pay, and then I teach in another school district. All right. So if there's anybody better than us, they better come run against us, right? Because we want to be replaced by people that think they're better than us. We're not just up here just to be here. Right? We're up here because we care. Okay. So with that being said, are we going to talk about this at the next regular board meeting, a special board meeting, or are we just going to move on?
It's up to the board.
I am swayed by what Trustee Sujasaka said of not having enough time to get the word out and consider this, but I am certainly open to discussing this again in special session or a regular meeting.
Is that your
I
motion?
think a
So I
motion would be
second.
helpful. Is
Is
that
that
a
a motion?
motion?
Second. Is that your motion? Yeah, second.
So do we need to clarify that though?
Yeah, so do we want, go
I
ahead.
guess I really wasn't making a motion.
Okay.
So I would strongly recommend we have a session that's an education session and not focused on the meeting, because, and for the public, our regular meetings have specific items that have to be approved, like policies and budgets. And I feel like based on this conversation and the engagement that we've done with the public today, it feels like they need more information. And we would be remiss to gloss over and give them 30 minutes in a regular session because we're discussing, timely agendized items that need to be approved.
So that was a motion, right?
So I'd motion to have a study session.
Would the study session be on the election process and by area elections with pros and cons?
Yes.
Yes.
Second.
I'm hearing it's a little broader than that, though, from what was said earlier. I think that there is should be a presentation on the board of directors and when elections are and our role, and the how we're elected is part of that.
Yeah, so when I said election process, that's what I meant. It was like the governing board, how that works and how you get elected. And is that what you're referencing?
Yes, I just think some general information on the whole process and our role, it sounds like, would be appreciated.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor
I'm
say
sorry,
aye.
so the motion
Oh.
was made by Ms. Jordan, Trustee Jordan, and then who was the second made by? Okay, thank you.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
And so would we like this special study session in September, or do we want to wait until a little bit later, maybe after this November election or do we want to have it sooner?
I would recommend sooner. I think this may also go in line with us getting additional information from legal counsel on maybe also a candidate forum, and maybe that's something we can bring up in that session as well. And the reason why I say that is because it will allow the public to make an informed decision in the upcoming election, but it will also prepare them that in 2 years, this process will be open again, and there will be another 2 seats that will be open, or 3 seats that will be open, and they have the ability to come in and not place their name in a hat, go through the process to file to be on the ballot, to run to be on this board.
Okay, so maybe what we'll do is I will gather some dates, and then at next week's board meeting, I can then gather from you what would be the best date that we can publicly state, and then we'll advertise and get it out to everyone. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, that sounds great. So that was unanimously approved. And I just want to say that, once again, as we always say, we're innovating. We're in the forefront because as board members, we also have the responsibility to advance public education and inform the public of these processes and how they work. So I'm not aware of any other district that's going to go into this detailed level of preparing for the next election. All right, so thank you for this opportunity for us to be in the forefront again. And with that, move on to the next item, which is persons wishing to address the board on closed session items. This portion of the agenda is available for individuals to comment on or address the board on an item addressed, on an item. In closed session, the maximum time allowed for any speaker is usually 2 minutes. Do we have any speaker cards?
No.
Okay. With that, we will take a 5-minute recess and convene to closed session at 7:15.